there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about The Pale Blue Eye, which is a film that's on Netflix just now. It stars Christian Bale, directed by Scott Cooper, and it's based on a novel by Louis Baynard, and it's one of those novels or stories that take a real life character and put them in a fictional setting. So in this case it's Edgar Allan Poe, and of course he spent some time at military school. They say, well, what if there was a murder at the military school when he was there, and what if he was involved in some way with the investigation? It's that kind of thing that you get a lot of, not a lot of them, but you get in some novels. It's kind of a thing, a romantic thing that people like to do. It's a romantic feeling of a story that some people enjoy. And it can be done good or it can be done bad, because, I mean, it's so easy to jump into that and make everything just about what they're going to write later on, and it becomes this thing that's not a story in itself. It just becomes a story that's there to show how much of a fan the writer or director is of this person. So that's the big danger of it. I mean, there has been good versions. I mean, have you ever read Billy Bathgate, the Yale Doctor story, which is all about Dutch Schultz, but with a fictional character into his story? It's made into a kind of so-so film, starring Dustin Hoffman later, but the book itself is really good. So it has been done. I've never read the Pale Blue Eye book, but I did watch the film on Netflix, and the film was very enjoyable. I really enjoyed this film. It's got a really good mood to it, and it avoids the cliche of, oh, everything from this story led to what Edgar Allan Poe wrote. Because it didn't, because it's a fictional story. Instead, it's just much more of the atmosphere of Edgar Allan Poe, and the influence of that in a detective novel is kind of the feel of it. Now, the big thing with this film is it's a giallo, which is an Italian horror movie that grew out of murder mysteries like Edgar Wallace and the Agatha Christie stuff, all of which were influenced by Edgar Allan Poe, because he started doing a lot of detective novels, and then Arthur Conan Doyle did it with Sherlock Holmes, and then Agatha Christie did it. And the genre split off into two different ways of doing this kind of story. You've got the Agatha Christie thing, where it's all about the logic of who did it, why they do it. It's a whodunit, a classical whodunit, and it's about find out who the bad one is and having them judged by a policeman or somebody. And eventually there's twists and turns. You don't know who the killer is until the last minute, but it's kind of a safe, genre. It's playful. There are some good examples of. There's some good Poirot book adaptations. There's some bad ones. There's the Miss Marple stuff. It can be used well for satire. It's been brought back up with the Knives Out movies, things like that. It can be a lot of fun. It can be playful. There's a really good one called The Last of Sheila that Anthony Perkins and Steven Sondheim wrote in the 70s. There's lots of good ones, but generally it is like who's a killer, and the better ones are kind of taking that form and twisting it a little bit. I'm much more into the kind of noirish version of that, which in like novels you could say it's like film noir, Dashiell Hammett, that kind of thing, where it goes into noir, goes into detective stories that have got a bit more grit to them. They are taking place in like working class environments, sometimes in the rich environments, but it's about the corruption of the people there that can't be solved just by solving a murder. It's not like the English Village type of thing, or the rich people in Agatha Christie novel, where it feels a lot safer. It's the convention it's been in like TV for so long of these murder mysteries. And these other ones, it's just as darker. And the giallo took from that kind of disruption. Essentially, I mean, Sherlock Holmes stories are kind of a bit of both. Sherlock Holmes stories have the murder mystery thing and find out who did it, but there is a kind of gothic element, in a sense that Holmes himself is a bit mad and a bit of a crazy person, and there's a gothic feel to some of the murders. Some of the logic to them is actually more gothic than realistic in any way, which is why I liked reading them as a kid, because it was was a mystery to them, but there was also something else there that wasn't quite logical. There was an emotional attachment to some of these stories that you wouldn't get in a normal murder mystery. So the Giallo took from that kind of convention, and you got stuff like the Mario Bava films in the 60s, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which was a kind of twist on the Hitchcock thing. Hitchcock took the suspense story, and he was much more about the kind of weird psychological damage done to the characters and how crazy they all are, rather than trying to solve a murder mystery. And he actually, if you look at what Ryan Johnson has done with the Knives Out things, he's doing a murder mystery, but he's always much more interested in the kind of damage done by these characters to each other and how messed up everything is. So that's much more of a fertile ground for adaptations. In the 60s and 70s, influenced by Hitchcock, Clouseau, and then Mario Bava, which were all doing these weird... they weren't... Some of them were psychological, some of them weren't, but they were all visually, imposing, and there was a sense of a kind of sickness within the society that they were showing. The Giallo came about, and that was basically Dario Argento was the one who really propelled it with Bird of the Crystal Plumage, then Four Flies in Grey Velvet and Deep Red and things like that, where it was a murder mystery where the person investigating is completely out of their mind half the time, or they're involved either in the case either because they've been targeted by somebody or because of an accident, but there's something in their soul that needs to find out what happened, and it's very influenced by Blow Up, the Antonioni film, where it's the idea of there's a drive in human beings to try and solve these mysteries. And all the way back to Antonioni with his kind of visual films that were much more about the mystery of life and things like that. It was very much an Italian thing, taking this genre and twisting it towards the psychological. And that actually moved over to America pretty quickly. I mean, if you look at the 70s, paranoia films, they're pure giallo. They don't have as many murders, but they're influenced by the atmosphere of giallo. And if you look at The Long Goodbye, it's got a kind of very depressive giallo influence on it. It really does. But it doesn't have the massive amount of murders that you get in the Italian ones. But Italy was coming off fascism, and then there was the recovery from fascism. The country was split in half between the north and the south, and there was lots of different... There's basically kind of two cultures within Italy. There was a lot of angst in Italy, a lot of terrorism, a lot of real problems that hadn't really been solved since the World War II. And there was anti-communist thing, but there was also a lot of writers and directors who were very socialist. So there was a whole sense of chaos, which led to Bertolucci films, which led to the spaghetti westerns. A lot of spaghetti westerns were very political. They were usually directed by people with political stakes who put the politics through the spaghetti westerns. Because spaghetti westerns was a good genre to have crazy capitalists doing horrible things. And when the spaghetti western died, a lot of those same directors went into Giallo and did these weird murder mysteries where corruption was everywhere, madness was everywhere. It was a kind of genre where they could hang their weird psychological damaged characters on. But the Giallo was great for that sense of explosion. The Giallo led to people like Brian De Palma, who brought it back to America with his films like Dress to Kill and Body Double and Raising Cain, which was influenced by Hitchcock, but was also influenced by Giallo, how Giallo was influenced by Hitchcock, and then influenced by Clouseau. So there's a lot of different countries influencing each other, and everyone evolving a little bit beyond what the last person had done. And then Giallo died. Giallo died in the 80s. I mean, the last person who really gets away with it is Dario Argento, because he started it in his style of Giallo. And even he hasn't really been a major force in cinema since the late 80s, really. He makes films, but no one's really caring that much. I mean, I'm an Argento fan, and even I'm aware that I'm probably one of the few people I know who actually still watches his films. It's just there's not much there in the culture that's interested in Dario Argento anymore. Or Giallo. And that's what was interesting about seeing the This one, the Pale Blue Eye, because one, it's got a Giallo title. The Pale Blue Eye sounds like a Giallo. It's got a Giallo structure. Now, I'm going to have to go into spoilers, but before I go into spoilers, I'll just say Pale Blue Eye is a very good film. It's very well made. There's haunting and haunted characters. It's not for everybody. For the pure Giallo fans, there's probably not enough murders and not enough gore. For the traditional detective story fan, there's probably way too much gore and way too much violence. It falls into that middle ground, which is actually a character study with all these genre conceits around about it. So it's probably too much for one and not enough for another. Because I like Giallo, but also like character-based stories, get into it. I don't mind slow stories as long as there's a reason for why they're slow. And this one, there was a reason for why it's slow. So it's a very good film, well acted. There's some eccentric performances in it. But the eccentric performances are pure Giallo performances. If you watch Italian horror films in the 70s, you know what's going on with some of these performances. And it's a joy if you like a certain type of film. So now to spoilers now. So, if what I've said has intrigued you, go see the film. It's on Netflix. Easy to catch. Now, the spoilers is, it's structured like a Giallo. Essentially, you have a very unreliable lead character. Actually, you have two unreliable lead characters. You've got the Christian Bale character who starts off looking very reliable. He's an investigator who meets Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Edgar Allan Poe is an obviously unreliable character and who no one trusts in the whole of the film. And he's, of course, the most trustworthy person in the film, even though he's a very dodgy character. And everyone else has a secret. And you can kind of tell who the people they should be targeting early just to get an idea. But there's actually two plots going on that are interacting with each other. And you've got a haunted protagonist, Christian Bale, who turns out to be the killer. So you investigate as a killer, which is, for a normal film, is weird. For a Giallo, that's just, okay, I've seen that before. That's good, cool. Very Tenebrae. You know, it's like, and the big mystery of why these bodies are mutilated is because Christian Bale kills them, and then these other devil worshippers who have gone crazy, have mutilated the bodies for their own ritual ceremony. Now you've got all these investigations around this, but eventually it goes back to that's the plot. And it's good enough. Because it's really about the haunting of a person by their past and how you deal with tragedy and how you deal with two families dealing with the death of a daughter. The first one, Christian Bale's character, he's dealing with his daughter was raped by three men in the military school and she committed suicide. She's never coming back. He's grief-stricken. On the other one, the family who's seen a daughter die of epilepsy and she's gone crazy and she's actually doing these sacrifices to try and cure herself by these weird rituals, and the whole family's gone crazy because they're terrified of losing her. So these two things echo each other. It's about the loss of somebody and how you deal with it and how the melodramatic excesses. And basically the plot is Christian Bale's figured it out early. Instead of investigating the murders, which we think he's doing, he's actually finding a way to set these guys up as basically the killers, you know, for his murders. Because they're just taking the bodies, because he realises they're not killers, they just take the bodies out there and do their thing. But he's there to kill these people who raped his daughter. So that's a pure Giallo thing, where it's like someone's been raped, someone's been killed, and the person who loved them goes mad with that because of that. That happens a lot in Giallo, because the Giallo is all about emotion gone crazy. And in this other story, in this film, the family seeing their daughter was going to die, go to the most extreme measures to find a cure, hopefully, even because we're in the 1800s, and science is still not that particularly great. So it's like, to them, this is a logical extension of, well, this might work, and we're desperate, so let's try it. And And because they've all gone crazy, you get giallo performances. Now, giallo performance is pretty big. I mean, if you've seen the Black Dahlia, you'll see some giallo performances there as well. In this one, it's Gillian Anderson going pure giallo as a mother. You've got Toby Jones doing the kind of repressed giallo authority figure who's hiding so much, and you can tell he's hiding so much. So it's not as overly hammy, but it's still a particularly arch performance of a certain type, because he has to show the madness within. The son character who's helping is a bit crazy, but he's not completely over the top, but he's getting there as the film goes on. And basically all his pals are getting killed one by one, and they're using the bodies to do this ritual. It's a crazy film. I mean, it starts out looking very respectable, but it's actually a crazy film with crazy emotions and people who are doomed. Because the big thing about giallo is the characters are doomed. A true giallo has a character who's either going to go mad at the end, or be killed at the end, or be haunted by what he's seen undone. So even the investigator tends to be haunted by the end of the film. That's a giallo narrative. And this film lives up to that, because everybody dies or damned or something or other. And basically Edgar Allan Poe, who is the kind of selling point of the film, is actually the person who just observes it all and observes these characters and how they interact with each other and how they try and process their grief or process how they're going to survive. And he's seen how dark the human soul can get through these experiences, which is going to inform him into his future. But it's already implied well before this. He's already well there before then. He's already so far there that he can recognise it as something he already recognises as human nature at the extreme. So none of this really is... It's something he's sensitive to, but it's not something that changes him dramatically. It's just like he's sensitive. You're expecting always this big thing with him is like, it's going to be the big thing that changes him. It never happens. It's much more like he observes certain things because he's smart and he's sensitive towards this crazy behaviour. That's what we got. So it's a really well done drama for that, but it's a giallo. It's really pure, full-on giallo. So which allows Christian Bale to be realistic in some scenes, and then as you go further into the movie, you see how crazy he actually is, which is good because it gives him another level. I've noticed in the last year or two he's actually been doing these films where he gets a bit more operatic as an actor, which he used to do in stuff like American Psycho and things like that, and he had toned down after a while, and now he's kind of embracing it again, which is good because it's something he's good at. And because he can be realistic, but also there's also other stuff there. And all the actors seem to know what film they're in. They all seem to know they're in a crazy film, but it's also has to be a realistic top to it so that the craziness can come from below. So, and it's like, it's basically a bunch of psychos suckling each other, trying to, figure each other out. So, we're the ones who are trying to figure the plot out. Christian Bale's characters has figured it out miles ago, and he's just trying to manipulate the situation to get his revenge. Another family doesn't realise the patsies for him. So I really enjoyed it. It's got a depressed feel to it. The pacing is quite slow, but it allows you to take in Poe's craziness, and what he's saying actually makes sense, but you have to acclimatise to crazy before you realise how much more sense Poe's making compared to everyone else. Like, we start out in the film, you're from the outside scene thinking, this guy's weird, this Poe guy's really weird. By the time you got to the end, you're acclimatised to Poe, and he's the sane one compared to everyone else. He knows what's going on. He says, if I had to get revenge for every slightest happened to me, I would murder everybody, but I don't. Like, he's like the one sane person in the film by the end. So it's a really enjoyable film. I thought it was terrific, but it's not for everybody. It's a type of film that most people will not get. They will not realise this is influenced by 70s horror. So, I mean, it's a giallo film in structure where you've got a murder, and then when you simply solve the murder, you realise that's not the murder because it's like half hour ago. Like, something else is going on here. And then you get the true revelation. But the true revelation doesn't matter to the world because they've got a cover story to move on. And the reality is between two people, usually. that's more of a giallo thing. There's a revelation, there's a pure revelation, and the revelation is always about how damaged people are rather than trying to solve the crime. So it's much more noirish type of thing. Everyone's doomed. So I really enjoyed this throwback film because it has a feel of the 70s films where everything goes to hell. You know, there's no hope for the future of humanity. It's like even the most fragile relationships will shatter pretty quickly. Or, you know, even those tender relationships will get utterly destroyed in this film. So I really enjoyed this one, but it's not for everybody. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you soon. Bye.